Today we're going to show you guys how to make a pop art image in Photoshop. Hey guys, and welcome to Phlearn. My name is Aaron Nace. You can find us on Twitter at Phlearn. We make learning Photoshop and photography a lot of fun, and this is no exception. Today's episode is really cool. We're going to take you behind the scenes a little bit to our photo shoot, talk about kind of the idea behind creating pop art and why doing these sort of things can be really good for you, even if you don't plan on creating a whole lot of pop art images. And then we're going to jump into Photoshop for part 1 of 2, where I'm going to show you how to turn a totally normal photo shoot into an awesome pop art image. So we're going to be doing a Marilyn Monroe shoot today, like pop art. So we're going to be doing, you've seen the Andy Warhol prints of Marilyn, I'm guessing? Yeah. So basically we're going to be doing that today. So we're going to be photographing you on the background and with relatively simple lighting, and you get to make fun poses and everything like that. And then we're going to be turning that into like a piece of pop art in Photoshop. One of the biggest benefits of attempting to do recreate a pop art piece that's just totally outside of the scope of what you normally work with is that you kind of have to shoot in a new way. And then for me, I know I had to work in Photoshop in a way that I don't normally work in Photoshop. So instead of just using like curves and adjustment layers and masks and things like that, I was going in and playing with filters and like doing all kinds of coloring. And for that, you just kind of have to figure things out. And there's a huge benefit to creating something like this that's like off the beaten path, because it goes and it has you explore other aspects of your programs, of your cameras and of photo shoots and things like that. And then whether you know it or not, you take little bits and pieces of those processes and you kind of like add them to your like mental toolbox of like, okay, cool, now I can do this, now I can do that, now I can do that. So in the future, when you have another photo shoot or another idea, you've got this little piece that you can pull and you say, oh, remember that time we did that pop art image? We created this really cool outline. Maybe I could apply it for this other shot here. So that's one of the huge benefits for doing this sort of thing, and why we're always trying to like push it and just like figure out the totally new way of shooting. For this shoot, we decided to go with pop art as a theme, and there's not really a better person to look to than Andy Warhol. So we were like, all right, let's see if we can do recreating an Andy Warhol. And doing some research and kind of looking up, the process and things like that. A lot of his images were done on a screen print. So he would like photograph, and then he would make screens out of those photos and then screen print the images. So we were like, okay, we have to figure out how to make something look like it was done on a screen print in Photoshop. So that was kind of like the beginning. And we used his really famous image series of Marilyn Monroe as an example for what we were actually going to be doing in our shoot. So there's a huge benefit oftentimes with finding like a very specific reference and then doing your best to recreate it or do a spin on that. And this is something obviously like this, it looks like an Andy Warhol. We're not creating an original piece of art here, but it's a really great tool and it's a really great exercise to kind of like build the way you think about photo shoots. So not only are we using the references, but those references actually like, they help you get better at things like that. So using references in this way is really, really important. so now you guys know kind of like why we did this in the first place and some of our inspiration behind the shot. Let's jump into Photoshop so we can show you step 1 on how to actually make the image. All right, guys, we're taking over in Photoshop, and I'm going to show you guys the first step on how to create a regular image into like a Warhol or a pop art style image. Here's our our image that we shot in the photo studio, and this is awesome. Our subject here looked a lot like Marilyn Monroe, which is really cool, and we decided to have her hold a gun and point it at herself because I just thought that would be really weird and kind of fun. What we're going to do is we're going to use this Warhol as a reference. So instead of having them side by side, you can actually just use your move tool and then just drag one from the other, like just click and drag, and then I'm going to hit F to full screen this out so we can start to work on this. Now, this is a couple different steps are necessary to create the actual final image that we want. First is we need to figure out how to get this like silhouette, basically like what's going on with this dark area, and it doesn't sound that difficult, but it's actually going to be a few more steps than you think, because you have to make sure like you want to be able to control the amount of detail you get in every single different part of the image. So in order to get that like exactly how we wanted, we're going to do it over a few different steps. So that's what we're going to do in part 1, which is today, and then in part 2, I'm going to show you guys how to do all the coloring, and then we're going to do some really cool things with the background as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'm going to just hit Command T. Let's just shrink that down and bring this over here. So basically our goal is like, how do we get this to look like that? And it's a good question. We're just going to go ahead and start playing around. So my background layer, I'm going to hit Command J on that to duplicate the background layer. And I know this is pretty much going to be colored from scratch here, right? So I can abandon the color that we've got here on our layer, on our existing layer. So Shift Command U is going to desaturate that. And basically what I'm looking for is I don't want this layer to show up where there are going to be highlights. Really, pretty much I'm just looking for it to show up where there are going to be shadows. So this is how we're just going to play around a couple times. Now, this is a good starting point. Let's just make that invisible with the black and white image. So I'm going to make a few different copies of this. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to make a few different copies. We're going to choose to kind of like have these layers blend together in different ways, and then we're going to create our final silhouette, and then we're going to use that over top of the colors in the next episode. Okay, so I've created a bunch of these black and white layers, and under them we're just going to create one white layer. So each of these we're going to just set from normal down here to multiply, because that's just going to be like, it's going to just darken, like the effect is just going to darken from one layer to another one. So we should get exactly what we want over time. Okay, first things first, let's go ahead and hit Command L on this layer, and that's going to bring up our levels. We're going to bring up our blacks, and then I'm going to bring up our whites. And this is basically, well, let's bring our blacks that way. This is basically for like our shading and other areas like that. All right, so something like that looks pretty good. So what I'm doing here is like this shading and stuff like that that's on her face there. This is basically going to be really similar to the shading that's on Marilyn's face right over here. So that's really all I care about with this layer. So what we can do is kind of like we can use our layer mask to make this only visible in the areas that we actually care about. So I'm going to grab a layer mask, and then we're going to paint black on the layer mask. There we go. Over top of this area, and over top of that area. All right. We'll leave it visible there. All right, because we really don't need any of these other areas. Okay, just this area where there's shading. Okay, very nice. Now, the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to make a new layer above that. We're going to hit Command L on this as well. And we're going to do something similar. I'm going to bring up the white ranges. There we go, into something like that. And we're going to bring up our darks. Okay, now we're going to do something a little different here because I actually want some of that, like the look that it was done in a screen print. So we're going to go into our filter menu and see what we can get, basically to have this try to look like it was done with a screen print. So I'm going to go to Filter, and we're going to go down to here to Filter Gallery. Okay, let's just zoom out a little bit. And there are a lot of different things you can do with the Filter Gallery. What we're going to do is we're going to just look at a couple of these things. Things like Stamp is usually going to be good. It's red and white right now because our colors are red and white. So if you hit D for your default colors, then they're going to be black and white. So let's go ahead and start with that. All right, so we can see Stamp is going to be usually a pretty good tool. Basically, you can change your smoothness here to kind of like change what each of these layers is going to look like, and you can change your white and dark balance as well. All right, there we go. Now, if you don't want it to be, you can see all these little like splotches and things like that. There's a really cool thing here in the filter gallery. You can actually add filters on top of each other. So like we have a stamp on top of a stamp now. But this layer, instead of being a stamp, let's say it's something else. Let's say it's like a, I don't know, let's say it's like angled strokes or something like that. So we can see basically what that's doing is it's gonna like lessen the amount of detail that we actually have on the image. So there's the angled strokes. Let's turn this off and then back on. All right, so you can see it's changing the amount of detail that's actually on the image. So when we go to our stamp and we turn that on, it's going to have a different effect than if we didn't have the angled strokes. So let's just turn the angled strokes off, and you can see it's a completely different effect. So each time you do this, keep in mind that like you can totally decide how much of an effect you want and where you want your effect. So like if we bring the stroke length up in our angled strokes, it's going to make less detail, resulting in less detail coming through from the stamp itself. So this is just a really good place to kind of like play around and figure out what exactly you guys want. You can play with your light and dark balance, things like that as well here. There we go. Let's bring this up a little bit. All right, I'm going to keep coming up, and we're going to use this for the bottom part of Maryland. There we go, and I'm going to hit OK. So now we have, this is going to be visible on the bottom part of Maryland. We're going to change this from normal down here to multiply as well. Okay, so we've got this for the bottom part, and then this will be for some of these other areas there. So we're going to put a layer mask on there. I'm going to hold Alt or Option and click on my layer mask. And there we go. And we're just going to blend these all together. Now, I'm totally okay that we're actually just on a, that we have a white background and we're just painting black on top of it. We can worry about all of our coloring and other blending options, things like that later. It's not a big deal. All right, now this layer we actually want to be a little bit darker because eventually we want these all to be the same level of darkness. We want a little different effect because you can see like this effect that we're getting here is not going to give us the same amount of detail that's on her face. So I'm going to click on this layer that is showing us this detail, and we're going to hit Command L, and then, all right, let's just see here. There we go. We can really push that in to make that quite a bit darker. All right, there we go. And just turning this off and on. There are a couple other reasons. I'm going to paint white right over here. Okay, now this other reason is if I take the layer mask off, you can see it looks like, it gives us the shading that we want over here, but down here it just looks like real. It just looks like a photograph. But if we turn this layer on, it starts to look a lot more, there we go, let's take this layer off right over there. It starts to look a lot more like art, which is really, really cool. And then when it comes to actually like bring in the different layers and the different colors later, we can do a lot more playing around with this. So we do have some shading here, and now we're going to bring in another one of these layers. We're just going to keep doing this and doing it over and over again. And we're going to turn this layer on, and then we're basically going to do the same exact thing, but this time instead of looking for detail down here on the dress, we're going to do it up here on the hair. So it's just doing this over and over again, and then we're basically going to create a final. All right, let's make that visible again. We'll go to Filter and then Filter Gallery. This took like 3 hours for me to figure out how to do, by the way. So you guys can just learn it in much less of a time. You don't have to spend 3 hours figuring it out because I'll just do it for you. Isn't that nice? All right, let's change this light dark balance here, and I can look up, see what's going on in the top part of the hair there. All right, bring our sharpness down for these. Our stroke length up. Now we'll bring that back down. I might want to, you can actually just turn this off and see if you like that. I kind of like that a little bit better. All right, so we'll bring this up right to about there. Actually, I'm going to turn on these angled strokes again one more time. That should give us just a slightly smoother appearance. Okay, so this is going to be for just, again, part of our image. I don't like how dark it is down here. See, like the hand and the shirt, you don't see any detail, but here up in the hair, it looks pretty good. So we're going to hit OK. There we can see. And now I'm just going to, again, we're going to change this from normal down to multiply. And it's covering everywhere right now. But if I hold Alt or Option and click on my layer mask, Now I can just say, tell it to be visible just over here. All right, and we could go just as dark or as light. Let's see what Marilyn looks like. She's looking good. She definitely has she doesn't have that much dark in that area. So we're just going to do this again. And that's really the most difficult thing about this, is choosing the balance from one area to another one. All right, let's do this again. I'm going to get this other copy here. We're going to go to Filter. We're going to go to Filter Gallery again. And now I'm going to look for something that's going to look really good right over here on her hair. All right, and that looks pretty good. So we'll hit OK. We're going to change this from normal down to multiply. All right, you know what? I want even more. We'll go to Filter, Filter Gallery again. We want this to be a little bit darker because I wasn't seeing that much of a difference there. All right, normal down to multiply. So this is a bit on the tedious side, as you can already see, but the results are going to be really great. So it's totally worth doing. There we go. And then this layer, I think, actually would look good. Make sure you're painting on your layer mask, by the way, not the layer itself. All right, so then we can kind of decide, what type of, there we go, integration we'd like. How far you want one layer to come up and where you want the next layer to take over. All right. And let's paint black over there. Shift click on here, and that's actually pretty nice detail over top of the eye as well. So I'm going to bring in that detail there. Let's just shift click on top of there and see if that brings us any other detail that we like. Not really. So you can see without this first layer here, we would just have this look. There wouldn't be any of the nice gradation and things like that that's going on here with Marilyn. So this is an important layer as well. All right. Yeah, just knowing when to stop is the fun part. Okay, so we're getting better. We're not there just yet. Let's paint this black over top of that eye. And we'll paint it on this layer mask black over top of that eye. So now we're going to choose something that's basically going to be chosen for her eyes. So let's bring this up as well. We're going to go to Filter, and we'll just do the same thing. Filter Gallery. And now we're going to zoom out, and we're going to find our light-dark balance exactly where we want. It's going to give us a really nice eye. There we go. And let's hit OK. So there we can, I don't like her nose there, but her lip is kind of cool. So we're going to change that from normal to multiply now. Just make that invisible. So we can see we've got a nice eye there. And it's kind of nice on this other eye too. So I'm going to paint black over top of that eye as well. All right. Very nice. Let's see our before. Let's bring in some more detail here on the left side. So we're going to make another background copy. We're going to bring this up. Let's make this visible, and I'm going to hit Command L, and then we're going to bring in, let's just go ahead and change it to a multiply layer so we can see what we're doing. Let's bring up our blacks quite a bit, and let's bring up our lights. All right, and we'll put a layer mask on there. And paint that visible there. I'm not too concerned about layer masking at this point. All right, let's just change this a little bit more. The reason is we're going to go over that in our next episode, so that's mainly why I'm not concerned about layer masking right now. We're going to go over that in part 2, as well as, so we're basically going to be cutting her out of the background as well as coloring, and then creating the background, which is going to be really cool. All right, and let's just get this trimmed up just a little bit more. All right, so we've got a nice face. I think we could use a little bit more detail right there. So again, I'm going to make another copy of this background layer. Let's make that visible. I'm going to change this from normal again to multiply. We'll hit Command L to bring up our levels. All right, and we'll put a layer mask on that. Hit Command I, and then we can paint white just right over top of here. Very cool. So it's totally a step-by-step thing. And this is going to be different for really every single image that you guys edit, where these different like balances and things like that are going to come in. So this is working for this image, but just keep in mind that if you're editing a different image, your process is going to be slightly different as well. All right, that looks great. And it's a little bit on the thick side. Let's hit Command L and let's see if we can tone it up. Okay, that looks good. And we're going to look at our original reference one more time. And let's see, maybe I can get some more detail here on the left side. All right, so we're going to create a duplicate of that layer one more time. And we're almost done, guys. Cool, let's go to Filter, and we'll go down here to Filter Gallery again. And again, I'm using the stamp filter, which is just one that I think kind of looks cool, but you can check out things like torn edges, which is going to give you like a totally different look. In fact, we'll just use the torn edges for part of this. Why not? All right, just want to make sure to get the right balance here between light and dark. All right, you know what? I changed my mind. I like stamp better. That's why I was using stamp in the first place. I should have just gone with my original choice there. Oh well, you live and you learn. All right. Very cool. And maybe I can bring in some detail there on the left. So we're going to change that again from normal down here to, you can go to darken or to multiply. They should do basically the same thing. And in this case, really the only place that it's helping me out is on the left arm. So I'm going to put a black layer mask on that. All right, and it's giving me some more detail there and some more detail there as well that I can kind of like go around and play with now. All right, that looks pretty good, guys. So that is the making of our black and white. You can see it took like a bunch of different steps to get there, but this is exactly where we want to be for creating the silhouette part of it. And then in our next section, we're going to take this. I'm going to show you guys how to strip the white away from it completely, recolor it, and then put colors behind as well. We're going to make a really cool background that's going to go behind all of it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this part. The next section is going to be even more exciting when we start working with colors. Guys, thanks so much for watching part one of our pop art image. If you guys like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, share it with your friends, and let us know how we did. Be sure to stay tuned for part two, where we cover how to actually add coloring and make everything come together so it doesn't look like just a bunch of lines. Thanks so much, guys. We'll learn you later.